Hola, Rhodians! Welcome back again to the Road to 40. I'm Jason, and I have with me here tonight Nick Castanes. That's right. We got some stuff we're going to talk about, but I want to open this up with a question. I was listening to Glenn Beck today, as I do from time to time, and he had a story on today about a little girl, 3-year-old girl, who had been attacked by 3 pit bulls, was terribly scarred, and she was supposedly at a KFC Taco Bell with her grandmother when they asked her to leave because she was scaring the other patrons in the restaurant that day. Now, they were so appalled, Taco Bell offered the girl $30,000, and they had raised from this news story $130,000 for her surgery so far, including the $30,000 from Taco Bell. Now, the twist in the plot is this. It wasn't true. They never ate at the restaurant that day.
Know that.
Yep, they went back and they reviewed all the video footage of the 2 restaurants that she could have been at, and there was no sign of them on either one. And they checked all the receipts because they claimed to have bought side order mashed potatoes and lemonade, and there was no receipt that contained those 2 items on it over the course of the day. So, the question that he posed is, Taco Bell's still willing to go through with actually the $30,000. They said, we don't care if it's a hoax or not. You know, this girl, it wasn't her fault that her grandmother schemed about it.
Sure.
So I started thinking about it, and they were totally against it. They were irate that Taco Bell would be willing to help this poor girl out. And so I started thinking, I'm like, well, how would I feel about it? I mean, like, obviously the grandparents have done something that they shouldn't do. But at the same time, like, maybe they couldn't find help any other way.
Right.
What do you think of that?
Yeah, that's a good question, and oh yeah, thanks for the introduction as well.
Yeah, no problem.
But yeah, no, that is a tough one because on the one hand, I don't know, maybe my conservative side's coming out a little, but you don't want to reward bad behavior, and it's a shame that the girl was used in that capacity to scam. I mean, the restaurant.
Right.
And I hope that other people don't. You see this as
try to do that themselves.
Yeah, they don't try to emulate that and do that, but that this doesn't open some kind of floodgate of ridiculous.
That was there and kind of my concern too, because that would be so easy for the next person to go, well, they got away with it, why can't I get away with it?
Right.
But at the same time, I think like maybe if they put the money in a trust for the girl, because they also brought up the fact of if Taco Bell hands them a check for $30,000, is it actually ever going to even make it to the girl? You know.
Sure.
I think there has to be some kind of guarantee, but I think you're right. Like, I think making this a precedent and saying, like, it's okay to do this, and like, all of a sudden morally, it's acceptable to get away with it.
I mean, it's like that. There are frivolous, and there still are a lot of frivolous lawsuits, like the whole spill the hot coffee kind of thing. But there are a lot of variables that are a little that are unknown, like like you said, whether or not that money actually goes to the girl, and it's weird.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, I mean, on the other side, I guess to play the devil's advocate, I guess you could make the argument that okay, maybe there's a reason behind the scam. But that's even a jump. That's an assumption. Again, another unknown that we just don't know. It could have been a scam for greed's sake, or it could have been that they had a legitimate issue. But another facet of this that I think is interesting is that you said it was Taco Bell, right?
Taco Bell, KFC, I guess.
Yeah. That they were actually willing to pay that money anyway. I mean, that's their choice as a private enterprise to do that.
Right.
And so you can make the counter argument to the whole, all these other people are going to do that as well. Well, then the restaurant just won't pay them. I mean, it's not like they're obligated by law to give some kind of reparation for that. Which, if that were the case, I'd be irate. I'd be on Glenn Beck, oh no, this is absurd, social decay kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, because the company was willing to pay that money, what can you do?
Yeah, that's a funny thing, and I think he was saying too, like, the liberal media was so quick to run the story.
No, that I gotta disagree with.
Without like questioning it or anything like that.
Well, I partially agree with this.
Yeah, I'm 50-50 on that.
On the one hand, I think the media does do that. They'll find a story, and a part of it is the whole we got to bring this story first before anyone else because our media in this country is essentially a business. regardless of
yeah,
where it is.
absolutely.
You know, whether it's big media corporations like Fox News or MSNBC or what. There's a rush to get to sensational stories.
Right.
And the result is that a lot of these aren't properly vetted and they turn out to be bogus. But to blame the liberal media for that, I mean, yeah, liberal media sources do that just as well as conservatives.
Exactly.
I mean,
exactly.
that kind of behavior is universal.
Right.
I mean, if you're going to take it as an opportunity to make a cheap political shot, then
and that's why you should always research the news that you read.
Yeah.
Don't take it at face value. So this is just something I wanted to open it up with tonight, but we wanted to talk about something else, and I'll give you the floor.
Okay. Well, yeah, where to start with this one? Jay and I were talking about this a while ago, and I was thinking that a really interesting topic to discuss, and that I've actually never discussed with anyone before, was what it's like to live in Lynchburg, Virginia, as an outsider versus an insider, someone who was born and raised like myself. Lynchburg is a fascinating town, and having grown up here, but also having traveled fairly widely. I've been out of the country.
Guam recently.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. I was in danger of capsizing. Did you see that?
No.
It's a funny story. I don't want to.
Oh no, go ahead. I do this all the time.
It's hilarious. There's
a drinking me and we go all over the place.
There's a congressman who I can't remember where his district was, or if he was a House Representatives or something.
Yes,
I don't know.
I know where the story's
But
going.
there's some hearing or some committee or something, and he's on camera saying that he was worried that Guam might capsize because the number of soldiers who were being moved to the island's military base or something. He was like,
Yikes.
"Are you afraid that the island might tip over and capsize?" It was just ridiculous. I mean, it was something. There's like something you'd see on like the Daily Show or something.
Right, exactly, or Mad TV.
Yeah, but I mean, the funny thing was, I think he must have been interviewing some military official or general or somebody, because the general was taking it all seriously. Like in this video, at the end, he's like, "Well, I do not believe that at present that this is a concern." I didn't know how he kept a straight face. That was nuts. But yeah, no, but I've been to England, I've been to Sweden, I've been to a few other countries, and all throughout the East Coast.
Well, now that's an interesting thing. Now, obviously, you're born and raised in Lynchburg. I was born and raised in Massachusetts, moved here 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Do you see, when you do leave the country and go to other places, religion as being such a big influence? Because I've heard in places like Great Britain and stuff where people think about angels and an afterlife and a god, and it's almost like humorous and comical.
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I mean, you can't talk about Lynchburg without talking about religion.
Right.
And it's so prevalent. It's so open. You can't drive down any road without stumbling upon a church. Whereas in Sweden, for example, I think the church attendance rate is ridiculous. It may be in the single digits. The number of adherents to Christianity is very low. I've heard things as low as 20%. That the majority of the population is actually non-believers or non-affiliated. When I was in Stockholm, we'd pass by churches, and they were noted for being objects of historical significance. It wasn't like this was a church where people went.
Right.
It was like, oh yeah, this cathedral was built in 15 something, and here's the museum. It wasn't like it was a house of worship. Yeah, exactly. And you, like on Sundays, you didn't really, see people dressed up for church, and it's a lot. I mean, I could go on and on about Sweden, but compared to the United States, Great Britain and Sweden are much more.
We have another guest on the show.
Yeah.
Run along.
So yeah, I mean, as I've traveled from place to place, I've noticed that because, and this is something I mentioned before, having grown up in Lynchburg, this is my normal. Being around this particular brand of fundamentalist Christianity is the everyday norm. It wasn't uncommon for people to ask, what church do you go to, as if that's somehow a sign of that's your personal affiliation, your social affiliation is what church do you go to. I've got dozens of stories that I'll probably tell through the course of the night. But yeah, it's it's. I mean, getting back to your question, it's eye-opening, especially for someone like I'll admit, like growing up, I was pretty sheltered. I spent most of my time in Lynchburg. That was kind of my world, and as kind of an outsider to that, being brought up Christian only maybe until I was 10 or 12, and then after that, coming to the realization that no, I'm not a Christian. No, I don't really belong here in this social environment. It's you definitely get the feeling that you're some kind of a pariah or social outcast, and when you leave, it's like, whoa, even though you're going outside of the world there's something familiar about it. There's something I mean, yeah, I'd have to say it's strangely familiar. It's like it's paradoxical almost. It's like the city you were born and raised in is the furthest thing from who you are. And it's kind of weird, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, Lynchburg for me was a culture shock. Like, I think generally the United States has this emphasis on Christianity anyway. It's and I would never call it a Christian nation.
No.
However, I would definitely say that like the majority of people view that as their religion.
Yeah, I mean, it's as far as industrialized Western countries, we're by far the most religious. I mean, of course, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I'd venture to guess that, I think 73 or something percent of the U.S. professes to be Christian. Whereas in Europe, it's nothing like that. Many countries, Christians are minority.
Right. And a lot of people don't realize that either. If you were raised here and you don't, watch world news or research it yourself, I mean, it's so easy to believe that, especially what a lot of the churches teach. I remember even going to church growing up, and a lot of the time, you're led to believe that, the most of the world, is either Christian or whatever like that, or at least where I was raised. So.
Yeah, and Europe for a long time, since Constantine, that's been the epicenter of Christianity. From Rome outwards. Europe was Christendom throughout the Middle Ages and throughout the Renaissance and up until I guess you would say the 20th century. And so, historically, even like the West is almost synonymous with the Christian world. But not so much anymore. I think. I don't know if it's a product of like a post-industrial society or what, but religion's declining even in the United States. Like we said, I mean, the United States is still a very religious country, relatively speaking, but I think like it's declined 10% in the last 20 years as far as the number of the percentage of Christians. It used to be like 80%, or plus during the 90s. But so it's interesting.
Yeah. Now I have interesting experiences. I've told this story on here before, but like when I first moved here, and I think I've told you this too. Carol and I went to Walmart. We were getting stuff for the house, constantly going in and out. And one of our first experiences was at Walmart, I think on Ward's Road. And Carol pulls my sleeve and says, "Look over here." And this old woman, probably in her 70s, she got a stick, looks like a mini cricket bat, and it's got the word Jesus in hand written on it. And she's going, whack! And she's smacking herself in the forehead. And now that's not, I don't want to say that that's all Lynchburg, because it's not all Lynchburg.
No, it's not. It's not a common sight.
But when I saw that, I was like, oh God, we have made a horrible mistake. And so, but yeah, ever since I've moved here, like, back home, up until probably like my mid-20s, I was still like attending a Baptist church. Yeah. But Baptist up north and south is two different things.
Oh yeah, no kidding.
Big time. And I also I never was approached in Massachusetts by anybody asking me if I've been saved.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I get cornered left and right in Lynchburg with that.
And that's actually something I wanted to talk to you about. Today I had an experience that I thought was kind of
no, I'm not saved. Oh, I thought you were going to ask me. Okay.
No, not that question. But today I was I was working, and a coworker of mine. I mean, I mentioned I think last week. A different coworker got into a very interesting political discussion. But today, in fact, a different coworker, someone else, talked to me about Well, it started when I was talking about grad school because I was interested in going to LC this fall, and I was talking about how the situation's become a little complicated, and because of a few things, and that I was kind of depressed about that.
He was screwed over.
Yeah, for a little more or less. But so I talked to her about this, and she's real understanding. And I don't want to name any names here, but I kind of had my suspicions about this person.
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely tell, and I feel bad saying this because it's a gross generalization, but there's a look, and you may have noticed this, perhaps, but there's a look that a lot of fundamentalist Christians have.
Oh yeah.
A stare,
Yeah.
particularly among women.
Mm.
And I have my own theories about that, but
I'd like to hear them afterwards.
okay, well, I'll go ahead and tell you now.
All right, sure.
I think a lot of households, and I've noticed this. This comes from personal accounts. It's anecdotal, sure. Take it for what it's worth, but a lot of people in evangelical or very hardline Christian sects come from dysfunctional families. Usually, that's what draws them to religion.
Yeah.
Many people who are in the prison system or whatnot, they use religion as a crutch, as a way of kind of driving some kind of moral guidance. Mm-hmm. Which is a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. That's up for debate.
Right.
I think good cases could be made for both sides.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But I know a lot of people who have come from very dysfunctional backgrounds who have gravitated to religion,
mm-hmm.
and they've got that kind of post-traumatic stress
yeah, I've
disorder.
seen that a lot,
Yeah,
and I'm really interested in this because I've always wondered that because I know quite a few people
mm-hmm.
that when I've met them, especially here, but even back home like that.
Yeah, oh yeah, and I think that is something, and it's pretty prevalent among women, I've noticed. And I don't know what caused, I'll leave that up for behavioralists and sociologists or whatever, but a lot of them, I don't know if they've had histories of abuse or what, but she's definitely got that stare.
Mm.
And so going back to the story, she pretty much said, well, why do you think you feel bad about this? I was like, well, I was listening while, I really wanted to attend this school. I pretty much planned my entire year around this. And it feels like, all throughout my life I've had a plan. Like,
mm-hmm.
Do this and then this and then this. And I knew after this will happen. But now it's kind of, the rug's been taken out under me. And so I don't have any control. And she's like, there, that's it. And I'm like, well, yeah, controlled. I agree. But she's like, no, you should forget about trying to control things. I was like, I agree. And she's like, put your faith in Jesus.
Oh.
Like, let him take the wheel. And I was like, whoa, I agree in theory, but the whole Jesus thing, that might be a little, off topic.
Yeah.
But she's like, yeah, put your faith in Jesus, let him take the wheel, and things will work themselves through.
Oh God.
And yeah.
And this is not Liberty. This is
yeah,
Lynchburg College.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, so I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, I was trying to remain positive because you learn. It's a matter of survival almost for people like myself who aren't Christian, who when faced with these situations, you've got to say the right thing. You've got to pick your words very carefully.
You do.
And you just have to kind of nod and say, yeah. And a part of me feels bad about that. But the inevitable comes next. She asks, so what church do you go to? Well, first, no, I'm sorry. Before that, she asks, right after she says to put, let Jesus take the wheel. She asks, now are you a believer? And that's hard to answer. And so I took it in the loosest interpretation possible, and I said yes, because I do have beliefs.
Yeah, just might not be the same.
Yeah,
as
if I
your
take that comment literally, I have beliefs, and so I was like yes, knowing full and well what she meant.
Yeah.
But a part of that, like I said, it's a survival instinct. You want to mitigate any possible confrontation and reduce the odds of the conversation progressing any further.
Right.
You just want to kill it there. And so I was like, yes. And then she asks, so you believe in Adam and Eve? And I'm like, at this point, it almost feels like some kind of a cross-examination.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, and if I wanted to be fully truthful, I'd say, no, that's absolutely absurd. Mm-hmm. It's a metaphor at best.
But an Adam and an Eve, so you can say.
Yeah. No, I didn't really have an opportunity to interpret that loosely, but But again, I had to give a wishy-washy answer.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, well, I don't really know, and I mean, in retrospect, I mean, that's BS. Like, I should have said no.
Right.
But you feel bad saying that.
I know.
Because it'll escalate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what you want to avoid. Especially for someone like us.
Right.
Who don't fit into that mold.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't want to be in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what happens
it's
next.
uncomfortable and awkward.
Right. The next logical step is that they'll try to proselytize. They'll try to convert you over.
Yep. Or at least pray for you.
At least pray for you, exactly.
I've got a story after this.
Yeah. So, with the whole Adam and Eve thing, I was like, and she was like, well, what church do you go to? And I'm thinking, a third question? Seriously? Like, now I'm really regretting, telling her about LC.
Exactly.
And so, I was like, well, I was brought up Episcopal, or Episcopalian. I just kind of left it at that. And she's like, oh, I thought you were Unitarian. I was like, how does she know? Because I'm not a Unitarian, but I do work at the Unitarian church. Right, yeah. And I was like, oh, crap. Somewhere along the line, I must have told her that was one of my other part-time jobs, and she didn't say anything at that moment, so I'd forgotten. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, well, yeah, I work there, but, I've got family who work there, which is true. My mom works there. Yeah. And she's like, oh, well, how do you feel about that? As if, they're mutually exclusive. Or at least that I had to actually think of a way to reconcile those two different, facts.
Right.
That I at one time was Episcopalian, which is no longer true, but of course she doesn't know that.
Yeah.
And that I work at a Unitarian church. And I was like, well, I'm very open-minded. Mm-hmm. I try to keep an open, I try to be, to remain tolerant. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know how she took it. I think it kind of took her back. Because something that I've noticed with a lot of people like that, the world's black and white. Mm. Things have to fit within certain categories. And if they don't, it opens up chaos. They can't conceive of a world where, people can have those kinds of contradictions. Exactly. Which I don't really think are contradictions, that you can be affiliated with more than one church. Mm-hmm. But in their minds, they are mutually exclusive.
Right.
And and then she started talking about, well, I went to, I go to a, what was it? I think Wesleyan, or I'm not exactly sure. It was essentially it was one of the original organizations that the Presbyterian Church split off from. So I guess she's Presbyterian, but a very, I guess, hardline version of that. And she goes on talking about her faith and she starts quoting the Bible and she of course knows all the stories that kind of illustrates the point that I should give my life over to Jesus and let him take care of business and that I shouldn't do anything, just stay home all day and just abide. But so yeah, that got awkward. And I was thinking about it afterwards. I was like, you know what? I do have very strong beliefs. I have a lot. I have a lot of opinions. I have very complex religious views, and I don't feel comfortable expressing that. And how much of a shame that is, that I have to kind of lie.
Yeah.
And I do feel guilty about that. I kind of have to lie or manipulate the truth or exclude certain facts just to avoid confrontation.
And to make somebody else feel like comfortable in the conversation or something like that. Yeah, I know what I mean. Yeah.
And it's a shame, because I think that the mark of an advanced, developed society is that you have this freedom of exchange, where you can share ideas, you can talk about things, and people won't judge you for it.
Right.
They'll simply, if they think you're full of crap, they'll tell you that you're full of crap. They'll debate you. You can have a conversation, but you can't have a conversation.
You can't hear, and therein lies the problem. Is this area is definitely not an advanced civilization. We're clearly at a point where you can't, no matter what you say to a lot of especially far right Christians and stuff like that, they automatically think that you're crazy. Yeah. And of course I'm right. What is this person saying? Then they start playing that game in their heads too, because they want to win you over no matter what they got to do. But they're not going to throw in the towel, and it's easier to just lie or manipulate the truth in a conversation with these people than it is to be honest with them, because then you have to deal with them. My example was, I won't say her name, but I was going into work one day, and this woman that always come to my work. She drives a tricycle, one of those motorcycles that's got the two wheels in the front, and she wears this jacket, Cyclist for Christ. And we had gotten talking about it at one point a while back, just, oh, what do you believe in? And I was like, oh, here we go. The typical conversation that happens. And I said, I'm really just kind of a seeker. I'm looking around right now. I said, I grew up in a Baptist church, but that's not who I am anymore. I said, I don't believe fully in all the, get down, Chewy. In all those beliefs. Like, I don't believe in a 6,000-year-old Earth. I think that's crazy. And so she's like, well, would you mind if I prayed for you? I'm like, and I know she means well. Like, in their heads and hearts, I think they honestly believe that they are, trying to save your soul. They don't want you to spend eternity in hell. So by doing that, they're doing everything in their power. But the problem is they aren't giving you the room to, like, they don't believe in that freedom of religion, really, I don't think. No, you're absolutely right. And you hit on an interesting topic, too. Many of them, of course, they generally feel that, they have very strong beliefs, and they generally feel that what they're doing is a good thing. Right. And I think they generally do care about you. It's like they do have a sense of morality that's, at least to some extent, inspired by their faith. But it's a twisted morality. It's a morality that says, if you don't do this, you're going to hell. And they want to save as many people as possible from that faith. And they think that they're doing a service by doing that. They think, oh my God, no pun intended, all these people out there are living in sin, and man's in this fallen state, and that we need to do everything in our power to redeem these people and redeem their souls, and that if we don't do it, if we stand by idly and do nothing, all these people are going to burn eternally. Despite the fact that there's no, I don't want to say there's no evidence, because I think it's self-evident. I don't even think that that's like where the debate's at. It's at a point now where it's, it's an issue of faith, and unless you're, in a Christian apologetic or trying to use logic to justify their faith, the only evidence they have is theological. Right. And so, but regardless, they believe very passionately in this, and they think they're doing such a good thing by doing that. And what they don't realize is they're doing harm and damage. And that's
to their own faith.
To their own faith, exactly. If you really want to win converts, and then do what essentially the early church did, and allow the church or your faith to be a source of actual salvation, feed the poor, help the disenfranchised.
Exactly.
Taking it, historically, the Roman Empire, clung to the elements of Roman society that clung most fervently to paganism were the entrenched elites. It was the people in the provinces and the lower class plebeians who really embraced Christianity, because Christianity was a universal religion. It said that every man or woman is capable of salvation, and in a sense is very much like Buddhism. I'm not saying that Christianity was even a good thing back then. It's far more complicated than good or bad, I think. But at that time, it was an outlet for people who were on the margins of society to find some kind of position in society, to elevate their place in the world. And that's the kind of thing I think that would be more effective than to simply use guilt.
Well, exactly. There's a perfect example of it, and I've spoken about him on here. I've met him, is Shane Claiborne, who, I can't remember the name of his organization. It's the New Way or the Good Way, or I can't remember what it is. And he doesn't go in your face. He's very liberal, and he goes into communities and sets up these, like, almost communes in a way, where people are able to self-sustain and grow their own food and, make their own clothes. He's helping these people in this way. He's been to Calcutta and spent months with Mother Teresa before she passed away. And, like, he goes to Iraq and just hangs out with the kids and plays with them. He's not bringing a message. He's letting his actions show what his beliefs are. And that is 1,000 times more powerful than getting in my face and telling me, are you saved? Jesus, take the wheel. I hope Jesus can drive, by the way, because if not,
he's taking a lot of. He can multitask.
Oh, good.
But today's, it's just, and that's the thing. Like, for a lot of people, what I experienced today would be like, oh my God, could you believe what happened to me? But when I came home, I was like,
it's typical of this area.
It's fairly typical. It's happened to me
a lot.
Mm-hmm.
More times than I really,
Yeah.
really like to say.
And in that contrast that you were talking about before, growing up here and then moving here,
Yeah.
at first it was a shock to me. It's
Yeah.
absolutely like just appalling that people would corner you and not let you, like, these two guys came into work one day and they literally cornered me and they talked to me about comic books and all this other stuff, and then all of a sudden they hit you with it. I'm like, what the hell? How do I get out of this?
That's the thing. These people, they have a missionary zeal, really, especially in Lynchburg, Virginia, because that's essentially the core of evangelical ideology. Is you have to evangelize, you have to spread the good news, and in a sense, it's almost like a duty or a responsibility.
Yeah.
That a personal duty, where it's almost like you can't fully enter heaven without doing it. Yeah. And I know that's not what they believe, but they work at it as if that's what they believe.
The case, yeah.
And, the woman today, she didn't try to proselytize. At that point, I think she kind of thought that I was a Christian of her variety. Mm-hmm. So, and again, I hate doing that, but, you have to make them think that you're on the same page so they won't continue. And so, she just went on and on about all these different stories in the Bible and how it pertains to our day-to-day life. And, if she took it as metaphor, I would have no problem with it. And in fact, honestly, I don't have a problem with her taking it literally. Like, that's her belief. I don't want to change her beliefs. That's what I don't want them to do. But there's this feeling of expectation.
Yeah.
That, if you don't believe this way, you're an awful person.
Right.
And, that's the thing. Like, and coming from where I'm from, like, that's par for the course. Like, that's just what you expect. But you were mentioning about the woman with, like, the paddle.
The Jesus stick.
You do see crazy things like that occasionally.
Yeah,
you see like billboards and signs.
Oh yeah, crosses on the side of the highway.
Yeah, you see crazy, bizarre. People joke about like church signs on the internet, but around here there are like
it's not a joke.
Yeah, it's not a joke.
I mean, there's people in their personal yards that have billboards that put things up, and you're just like, can you say that? Like, that seems offensive. Like, you're not making a point. You're gonna turn people off.
Right. And that's the thing. Like, because they're so ardent about getting out there and evangelizing, it's always in your face. It's always visible.
Yeah.
And it almost has this oppressive feel. Like, I don't want to compare it to like North Korea or a country that does have an oppressive regime with a state ideology. But you do get that kind of sense in Lynchburg to some extent. Yeah. You'll walk into a Walmart, like, on Ward's Road, and there are LU banners hanging.
Right. They have a store there now, Liberty University store.
I mean, we haven't even, I can't believe we've gotten this far without talking about Liberty or Jerry Falwell.
Well, let me do this. I want to wrap this up just for part one, because this is 33 minutes, and I'm afraid that something's going to happen that's going to stop recording, and we'll lose everything. So, and I'm going to refill my drink because I'm out. And we'll be right back with Jason Oliver and Nick Castanes talking about Lynchburg. Bitches.